Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited for this video because I'm going to be talking about non-fiction books, all of my favorite non-fiction books, and I love non-fiction books. I love learning about new things. I love science. I love just learning about people's lives, what they've been through, things in history. I just love non-fiction. So I thought that for everyone who doesn't really know where to start with non-fiction, I would give you 18 book recommendations and I will categorize them a little bit. So if you want to skip to a different category, I made these chapters in the video so you can just easily skip to them, but you can also just watch them all because some of them kind of overlap in different categories. But yes, let's just get into these 18 non-fiction book recommendations so you will know exactly which non-fiction book you should pick up next. So the 4 categories that I'll be talking about are people, history, science, and like mindfulness or self-help books. And do keep in mind that some of the like history and people books kind of overlap a bit. So again, recommend you just watch them all. But let's begin with books about people. The book that inspired me to make this video is one that I literally finished like 20 minutes ago. It was so good, and it is Just Kids by Patti Smith. So if you don't know, Patti Smith is a writer, a singer, an artist, and just a visual creator. And this is all about her life in the 60s and 70s when she moved to New York City and when she met Robert Mapplethorpe. And Robert Mapplethorpe was this very famous photographer. And this was an account of exactly how they met, everything that happened in their lives, the people they met, and just, I didn't really know what to expect because I didn't really know them too well, but I was so incredibly fascinated by everything that happened in this book, and especially the fact that Patti Smith just lived in this very small town, didn't really know anyone, and then she moved to New York City all by herself and ended up becoming friends with like Janis Joplin and seeing Jimi Hendrix and, you know, dating Robert Mapplethorpe, building herself up to becoming this incredible artist. It's just so fascinating. It was also very tragic because Robert Mapplethorpe died. It is well known that he passed away, so it's not a spoiler or anything. I was just in awe as well with her writing style, and even if you don't know much about them, still highly recommend you pick up this book. It was just so interesting reading about their lives. So yes, this is the one that inspired me to make this video, and it really just, it brought my love for non-fiction to another level. So highly recommend this one. The next one is called The Radium Girls. This is also kind of history, but it focuses more on these women, so I decided to put it in this category. But The Radium Girls is all about the women who worked in factories, like watch factories, where they used radium to paint the dials of the watches, so they kind of, you know, glue in the dark. And this takes place during, I believe it was the 20s, and this is all about how they found out that using radium is actually incredibly toxic. It kind of destroyed their bodies from the inside out because they used these little brushes, then they would put it in their mouth to create this little tip, and then they would use it to paint the radium. So without knowing it, they actually consumed a lot of poison because this radium caused like radium poisoning. And the horrific thing about this book is that some people behind the factories actually knew that it was bad for the women. However, they chose not to tell because they made an incredible amount of money with all the products that they made. And this book is all about how they fought for justice. They went to court, they went through so much effort for justice. It was so incredibly interesting, sickening, fascinating. I was so angry whilst reading it as well. So yes, this one was very good and just not what you would expect. Highly recommend this one too. The next one is called Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This is a letter written by Ta-Nehisi Coates to his son, and it is all about what it's like being born inside of a black body in America and the racial injustice that they experience every single day. It was incredibly heartbreaking. It's like really short, so again, this, you have to read this, but it was so full of information. It made me so angry to read about what Ta-Nehisi has been through and how he is telling his son to be careful because of the color of his skin. It is just so unfair, and that is what made me so angry whilst reading his book. But I also think it is so incredibly important that we learn about these experiences that black people, you know, go through every single day and the racial injustice that they experience. So this was a very, very good one. As you see, I also tabbed a few passages because, you know, I just wanted to remember those. So This is the third one. The next one was very popular a few years ago. It is called In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park. And Yeonmi tells us about her experiences living in North Korea and escaping North Korea and what it was like living inside of North Korea, because of course the rest of the world doesn't really know much about what happens exactly inside of that country because it is so, you know, closed off from the rest of the world. And she really tells us about what it was like living there, how she escaped, and just how incredibly scary it must have been for her. And if you haven't read this yet, I'm pretty sure you may have heard of it. I don't have a physical copy of the next one, but it is Becoming by Michelle Obama, and I listened to this on audiobook. Such a good audiobook, highly recommend you listen to it on audiobook. But Becoming is basically a story all about her life and how she went from a little girl to first lady, and how she met Barack Obama, and you know, with her kids and her life as a young woman. She read it herself, like she narrated herself, so it even felt more like I was just, you know, living her life with her, kind of. It was so fascinating and so beautiful, and there were so many tragic moments in there as well. It is an amazing book. I mean, it's Michelle Obama. I freaking love Michelle Obama. So I highly recommend that one on audiobook. She also has just such a soothing voice, and I was completely just mesmerized by her voice and everything that she told. She's a very, very inspiring woman. The next one is Just Mercy, written by Brian Stevenson, and this is all about him as a human rights activist, and he is a lawyer who helps people who are on death row, and he represents them because some inmates who are on death row are treated very unfairly and maybe didn't even have a proper trial. So he represents them and he tries to help them. This was such an incredible story because you could really feel the love that he has for people and how he is so against injustice. And I also learned a lot about the American justice system and how unjust it often is. So this was a very, very interesting book, just eye-opening, and it made me so angry at the same time as well. Just realized there are not a lot of happy books in this pile, but like there will be, I hope. Yes, not very happy, but more like interesting. I flew through it. I thought it was so good. So again, highly recommend that one. I'm gonna stop saying highly recommend that one because I highly recommend all of these books, but it was really, really good. And the last book that is about people, and this one is actually an essay. It is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf, and this is a very, very famous feminist essay about what it's like being a female artist and how they're always struggling more than men because they are actually denied a lot of the social and economic independence that men do get. So the title suggests like a room of one's own. For women to thrive and to grow, they need to have the right to a room of one's own. It's like they have to have the freedom to have their own offers in order to grow. And in this essay, she is really talking about the importance of that and also talking about her own experiences. This is actually a bind-up of A Room of One's Own and The Voyage Out. I haven't read The Voyage Out yet, but that is a fiction book, so it's not important for this video. Okay, those were all of the books about people. The next one, like the next theme, is probably my favorite. It's science. Again, if you don't like it, you can just skip, but I personally love reading science books. I think it is so interesting, and I'm going to be talking about a few of my faves again. Okay, so two of my favorite science books are actually both written by Stephen Hawking because I think he was such just a fascinating scientist, and those books are A Brief History of Time as well as Brief Answers to the Big Questions. So you may have heard of A Brief History of Time. This one is quite old, but this is all about how the universe began and, like, you know, the Big Bang and everything in space. But the thing is, this one is quite old. I believe it was written in like the 80s, so some of these things may not be completely accurate anymore. Still very interesting to read about, and I like the fact that he wrote his books in a very kind of easy way to make sure that people like you and me can just understand it, and we don't have to be a scientist knowing all of these crazy words to understand what he wanted to say. So this is a very accessible book for just people like you and me, and if you want to learn more about science. However, I do recommend you this one a little bit more because this is a lot more like modern day, and just he took some new theories into account when reading this book. And this is Brief Answers to the Big Questions, and this is all about his answers to the big questions like, is there a God? How did it all begin? Can we predict the future? What is inside a black hole? All of these big questions are answered, like his thoughts and opinions on these big questions. I thought this one was so incredibly interesting, and I love that he again just used so many actual scientific theories to come to his answers. I love this one. I've only read it once. I really have to reread it because I definitely forgot a lot of the things that were mentioned in here. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. So yeah, if you just want to know more about the universe and everything in it, highly recommend. Oh my god, I'm not going to say it anymore. Read these 2 books. The next one is called The Upright Thinkers by Leonard Mlodinow. And the reason I bought this one, I was just browsing through a bookstore in Berlin and I saw this little blurb written by Stephen Hawking, and he said, Leonard Mlodinow never fails to make science both accessible and entertaining. And then I thought, yes, I'm gonna pick up this book as well. So this book is basically all about, I will read you on the back of it, it playfully tracks the evolution of man's understanding of the world over millions of years, beginning with our ingenious ancestors who smashed stones to create tools, and concluding with the 20th century German physicist whose quantum revolution led to computers, accessible and entertaining. I can remember being it quite dense, but very funny. And that is what kept me reading, because it was just very light and funny whilst being dense at the same time, because there's just a lot of information in here, but it was so incredibly interesting, hence why I just really enjoyed this one. So this is more about just the earth and, you know, mankind, and the other ones are more about the universe, but this one was very fun and very interesting. Okay, the last one is one that I actually have not even finished, but I do really want to, you know, put it on this list, and it is called A Brief History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. As you can see, I'm tabbing a lot because there is so much like information in this book and so many amazing facts are in this book. Basically, it is a short history of nearly everything. The writer talks about the history of, you know, the universe, the earth, the like elements. Just, there is so much information in this book. Hence why it just takes me a really long time to read, and I have to say I haven't picked it up in quite a long time. But basically it's about the cosmos, it is about Earth, it is about the new age, about life itself, dangerous things on the planet like fire and like Ice Age and Darwin, and just there's so much information about this book. And again, what I love is that everything that he talks about, he writes it quite easily, so people like you and me again can understand it. There are so many interesting facts, like mind-blowing facts in this book. Oh my god, the first thing I tab all of the facts. In less than a minute after the Big Bang, the universe is 1,000,000 billion miles across and growing fast. There is a lot of heat, 10 billion degrees of it. All of these like facts that just make your brain go, oh my god, how is this possible? So yes, that is just something I absolutely love about this book, all of the facts in here, and it just teaches you a lot about everything. So this is really a time for me to continue reading this book, but I really want to recommend it because it is just absolutely brilliant. The next science book is called Women in Science, and this is one of my faves. This is about 50 fearless pioneers who changed the world. Because if you think about scientists, I'm pretty sure that you will think of men. And if you look for scientists on Google, who are there to pop up? Men. Whereas there were so many amazing women who also contributed so incredibly much to science, but they're often overlooked because of the patriarchy. But this book tries to just shine the light on these amazing women, and what I love about this is that it is just incredibly beautifully illustrated. Every page has an illustration, all of the facts about the woman, and it is just absolutely brilliant. We have come to the next chapter, which is history. And again, some of these kind of overlap with some other chapters, but that's fine. The first one is one of the most fascinating history books I've ever read. I wanted to say written, I wish. Read is Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, written by Yuval Noah Harari. And as the title suggests, this is a brief history of humankind. It is big, but I listened to it on audiobook. It was just mind-blowing. I absolutely love this. It's really opened my eyes to just so many things that happened in the past. This is definitely one of my favorite history books. I just can't tell you anything more about it because you just have to read it for yourself. There is also a sequel, and it is called Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. This is all about, you know, what could possibly happen in the future with humankind and where we might go. I love them both. Sapiens is definitely my favorite, but this one was also just so brilliant. And if you're just looking for a lot of information and a lot of mind-blowing facts, these are the books for you. The next history book that is very interesting, again, I haven't finished this yet, but it's already just so interesting. It is called Titanic First Accounts, and this is basically all about passengers who were on the ship, and they told us exactly what happened, how they felt, how it felt to be on a freaking sinking ship. And a lot of the information in here is from Lawrence Beasley, Margaret Brown, and Oswald Gracie, but there are also a lot of more passengers on the ship who told us all about what it was like. The thing I love a lot about this book is the cover. I mean, look at this. I don't want to like break it. You can see the entire ship on here. Oh my goodness, this is one of the most prettiest covers I've ever seen. And the detail on this cover is so cool as well. Look, that's the grand staircase. How amazing is that? So if you're interested in the Titanic, this is definitely a very interesting one. I must warn you, it is quite dense, and because the passengers are not, writers, they sometimes talk a bit dry, and the writing style is a bit dry, but it is still fascinating and interesting and, scary to read about what it was like being on the sinking Titanic. The last history book I want to talk about is called The Women Who Smashed Codes. And this is all about the women during the Second World War who helped decipher coded messages that the Germans sent to each other. And those messages contained a lot of important information about, possible attacks that they were going to do. I am just so happy that these type of books are written because there are so many women in history who don't get acknowledged for the amazing work that they did. But these are all of the women behind the scenes who helped end the Second World War. So whilst I was listening to this book, I listened to it on audiobook. I was just like, yes girl, yes girl. And I thought it was so interesting to read about people behind the scenes who did so much to end this World War. And then the last category is like mindfulness or self-help books. I have to say I'm not the biggest fan of self-help and mindfulness books, but there were definitely some that really made me think and that I enjoyed so very much. Okay, so the first one, again, this is kind of an overlap with the category people because it is a lot about people, but it is called Wintering by Catherine May. And this book is all about the kind of seasonal depression that some people can have when it's winter, when it gets cold and lonely and dark, and how people deal with this. And this follows a lot of people from Scandinavia, and they tell us about how, especially like in Scandinavia, it's a lot darker and a lot darker longer, during the winter because they're so up near the North Pole. And how they deal with this and how they kind of embrace the cold that winter brings with it. It was so beautiful reading about this, and it really made me appreciate the dark and the cold and the winter that returns every single year. So if you're looking for a book that really makes you appreciate the cold, and it's also very interesting because you read a lot about different people's, lives and how different everyone's life is, this was definitely a very, very good one. The next one is actually a very self-helpy book. It is called Atomic Habits, and this is all about creating habits and how you can create habits and how you can stick to habits. I'm very bad at creating habits. Like if I have a habit, it works, but just creating new ones, I suck at it. But this book really helped me to become more mindful and to think a bit more about why I want to create such habits and how to create them. And one of the things that really stuck with me is habit stacking. If you want to know what it is, definitely read the book. But that is a very interesting part about creating habits. And even though I forgot a lot that happened in this book, some of the things just stuck with me. So if you want to learn more about how to create healthy habits and how to stick to them, not highly recommend this one, not this is the book for you, just take a look at this book. And then the last one, oh my god, book 18, is called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And yes, this is a very spiritual book. Eckhart Tolle is a very spiritual writer, I believe from Germany. And this basically is all about how to live in the now and the power of living in the now and really appreciating the things around you at this very moment and not looking too much to the future or not looking so much back to the past, but really about living in the now. I thought this one was very spiritual, and I'm sometimes a bit skeptical when it comes to spirituality, but I'm very interested in it, so I'm still I'm very open to learning more about it. So that is why I decided to listen to this one on audiobook, and it definitely opened my eyes and it really made me think a lot more about the life that I'm living and how I can live more in the now. Eckhart Tolle actually wrote more books about this topic and just spirituality, so check out some of his books if you're just interested in reading more about spirituality. Whoa, I am hot, I am sweaty, I talked about 18 books and I had so much fun because I just love non-fiction books. I really hope you found some recommendations in this list that you may be interested in reading. Let me know in the comments which book from this entire list you plan to read or want to read or are going to definitely read. Let me know in the comments, I'm really curious. Of course, I am also always looking for non-fiction book recommendations, so again, also definitely let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Oh my god, if you reached all the way to the end of this video, and if you want to comment something but you don't know what to comment a little light bulb emoji, because of the many books in this like list that just made me go, oh my god. So yeah, comment a little light bulb emoji. I really hope you liked this video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And of course, you can also follow me on my social media and on my Patreon page. I always link everything down below in the description. And last but not least, I really hope you're having a beautiful day, and I will hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!